But yeah, I do recommend that if you have access to it. It's the Chernobyl 5-part miniseries. It's about the accident itself and the immediate aftermath of the investigation and what happened and how they fixed the problem, or at least got it under control so that it wasn't going to be even worse than it turned out to be. So yeah, bad deal. This happened in 1986. They let's see, this one, we'll get to that one. Yeah, all right. So yeah, here's back to Ukraine. When they had the plant explosion, the Soviets didn't tell anybody about it. They kept it secret until and denied that anything had happened until the United States took satellite photos of the site and said, "Hey, what about this exploded nuclear reactor? Is that one of yours?" And they said, "Oh yeah, yeah, that one. Yeah, okay. Yeah, funny thing. Yeah, one of ours did actually explode." The way the West found out that this thing had gone off was when radiation detectors in Sweden at a Swedish nuclear power plant started going off because people walking into the plant from the parking lot were contaminated with nuclear radiation, and they were setting off the radiation alarms in this nuclear power plant. Large parts of Western Europe were contaminated with this stuff before the Russians even admitted that it had happened. It was a real debacle. The immediate area around the plant, an area of over 1,000 square miles, was evacuated, and to this day is still permanently evacuated. They don't let people live there. There's a city called Pripyat, which is where the engineers and technicians that ran the power plant lived. It was a beautiful town, at least by Soviet standards. New, clean. It was for the privileged few. Um, Communist Party members and technicians. Um, it was a nice place to live, and now it's completely abandoned, and you've probably seen pictures of it. Um, and as I say, to this day, the area around this is people are not allowed to live there because it's still contaminated with nuclear radiation. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what does this look like? Is it a nuclear hellscape where it's basically just a desert where nothing lives and mutant animals are flopping around in their death throes? Well, no, it's not. Short answer, it's a wilderness paradise now. Now, I've put a link on the stream for Radioactive Wolves. This is a movie that I show in class, but obviously we don't have time to. Watch as much or as little of this as you want to. It's very interesting. The point that I want you to get from this is that the radiation, which is still there, uh, has done no measurable harm to the animals that live there. The truth is, we don't know how dangerous it is to live in an area which is contaminated with radiation. Now, if you watch this, you'll get the idea, hey, people could just move back in there. That's not true. Okay, this just because wolves and the entire food chain is healthy and can live out their lives in this irradiated area, in this contaminated area, that does not mean that people can't. Okay, because animals don't live very long. A wolf that lives 20 years is a pretty old wolf. So it may be that the amount of radiation there would kill the wolves from radiation or from cancer in 25 years, and we just never see it because wolves don't live that long. But if humans live there and they get fatal cancer in 25 years, that would be a big deal. So the truth is, we don't know how dangerous the long-term effects of radiation are. Um, I'm not saying that it is not dangerous. I'm saying we don't know how dangerous it is. And when you think about it, this is not research that we can really do. We can't contaminate people with nuclear radiation in large numbers so that we can get statistically significant results and then see how long it takes them to die. That's kind of immoral, and that research is never going to be done and shouldn't ever be done. However, places like Chernobyl kind of offer us a natural experiment. The result of the accident, we can follow the people that live there and were evacuated. We can look at the animals that live in the area and try to get some idea of how dangerous it is. And as I say, again, we don't know how dangerous it is. Now, the reason that we abandoned the reason we abandoned nuclear energy in the first place is because in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't worth the risk. Nuclear power plant designs at that time weren't particularly safe. The question of what to do with the nuclear waste was completely unanswered. And we're talking about stuff that can be dangerous for 100,000 years. And we really should have an answer to that question before we start producing more nuclear waste. This is totally legit. There's the chance of nuclear accidents. And all of these things are risks that in the 70s and 80s seemed completely unreasonable, completely not worth risking because there was plenty of fossil fuels and acid rain had been taken care of, and we weren't aware of global warming. We saw no upside to using nuclear energy in the 1970s and the 1980s, so we moved away from it. But today, global warming is a thing, and nuclear energy has the ability to fill the gaps from solar and wind and provide a way to power our entire civilization if we can solve the technical hurdles of safer reactor design and disposal of nuclear waste, and having a better idea of just how dangerous it is if one of these things pops open. Okay, last bit here. Again, this movie about film about the wolves in around Chernobyl is very interesting, and I do recommend it. Um, what city do you think this is? This is a modern, clean city with obviously millions of people living in it. This is Hiroshima, Japan. This is the site where the first nuclear bomb was dropped. And again, this is not a nuclear hellscape. People rebuilt the city. They carted away the material which was contaminated by the bomb itself. Low levels of radiation remain, but they built a city on top of it, and it is a healthy, vibrant place to live. There are no differences, statistical differences between the population in Hiroshima and other cities in Japan as far as cancer rates or any of the other anticipated effects of radiation. So even though, yeah, you can still detect radiation from the bomb that went off here, there seems to be no effect on the population. We're talking about extremely low levels of radiation, folks. Okay, it's as low as the general background. This is Nagasaki, same story. This is where the second nuclear bomb was dropped on Japan. And again, they rebuilt the city, people live there, and there's really no difference between living in Nagasaki and any other Japanese city as far as radiation effects go on the population. Point of all this is we don't know the effect of radiation long term, and it would be nice to know that when we're thinking about whether or not we're going to start moving toward nuclear again as a way to combat climate change and global warming. All right, what did we learn today? We learned about half-lives. We learned about and how they work. We learned about nuclear waste and the problems with disposing it. Undersea disposal is a technically workable solution, a whole lot better than burying it anywhere on land, like out in the desert, and way, way, way better than keeping it in swimming pools around nuclear power plants, which is what we're doing right now. The obstacles to undersea disposal are political. They are not technical. This is something that we absolutely could do. And even if we don't go back to nuclear energy as a power source, my personal opinion is we should do this undersea disposal for the waste that exists today. That's my personal opinion. That's not part of the curriculum. That's not something you're going to be tested on. That's not going to show up on NGSS. That's my personal view. And you guys, being level 1 students, are going to be the movers and shakers of your generation. And this is something that you might consider thinking about if you want to, you as a generation, think that nuclear energy is something that needs to be looked at again. All right, that's it. That was a long one, but we're just about done. So thank you for your time. Watch the video, answer a couple questions, and we'll be all done.